Okay, so this is for assignment 5, and what we're going to do is we're going to create access lists for assignment 5. Basically, it's just what's called an ACL configuration. Number 1 on the assignment, it says that we need to configure the web server, basically VLAN 1, which is what we're on, what the web server is on. And I did that in assignment 4, but just to kind of show you again what you're supposed to do to get it to work, let me open up my notes just to double check I'm not missing anything. So basically, you're going to enable the router and you're going to config T, which lets you into the configuration terminal. Then you're going to do an interface. And again, remember how I said, if you type it in partially and you click tab, it's able to just do the remaining, letters in the word, because it's just going to fill it all in. So gigabit Ethernet, 0/0/0. And what you're going to do is you're going to type in .1. It's going to create the sub interface. If this is your first time creating it, it's going to create this sub interface for .1, which is VLAN 1, which is what we're going to call it. You're going to do what's called an encapsulation .1Q, and then you're going to do 1. Basically, again, we're signing this to VLAN 1, which VLAN 1 is what the server is on. It's the default. You would enter that. I'm not going to, because again, I've already created it. And then after you enter, you would then type in the IP address. So you do IP address 192.168.1.0, and you're going to assign it to the subnet mask 255.255.255.0, and then you click enter. That's assigning the this sub interface with this IP address sub internet, and you're basically, all those IPs are going to be configured in the .1 from .1.1 all the way through 1.254. And then after that, after you enter that in, you will then you will type an exit, which lets you leave the configuration of the sub interface, just go back into the terminal configuration mode. Then you would type in IP DHCP pool. You would then give it a name. For me, I named it default, but in the assignment, it says to name it internal. So that's how you would type it in: IP DHCP pool eternal. Again, I'm not going to use eternal because mine is default. So after you would enter, it brings you into the DHCP configuration, and you would just type in network. And what this is doing is basically establishing the what the network is going to be, like the range and everything. So 192.168.1.1.1, and then again that sub interface subnet, I mean, of that 255.255.2550. You'd click enter. Again, I've already created it, so I'm not going to do that. You click enter, and then you would type in the default router, which the default router is what we placed in the account when we did IP address, which would be 192.168.1.0. So that would be your default router. And then you would enter, but again, I'm not. And after you enter that, that's configured, right? The web server and stuff, that's all configured. You could exit out of that. And that's how you do the web server. I did it in assignment 4, but I just showed you how to do it again to get it all up and running and working. But now we're going to move on to part 2 of the assignment, which is saying that we noticed suspicious activity in a sales staff computer. and it's this computer that we're going to be messing with. Let me do a quick highlight of it in a deep red. So this computer right here that I'm outlining, that computer, this one right here that I'm hovering over, is the one that we're going to basically say, hey, this one is this one we're not going to allow it to talk to the sales manager's VLAN. So to do that, we have to configure an ACL or an access list to fit the scenario that we're doing. So this computer is not going to be able to talk to this computer, PC4 in VLAN 20. So to do that, we're going to need to set up the ACL list. So if you're in config, you want to be in that config mode, but I'm just going to type in so we can start fresh. So you're like this, you will type in config T, lets you into that configuration mode. And you're going to do a command called IP access list extended, and then you're going to give it a name. And whatever name you give it is just the name of the access list. It is good practice to write it out to be something that's really easily seeable when you're working with the network. So what I do is I'll type in like ACL underscore prevent underscore PC3, which is the PC name and my network, to manager. You could type in, this could be named anything. You could type it, you don't have to type in what I'm typing in. So you can name it anything you want. You could type in ACL, you could type in prevent PC or VLAN 10. You can, again, it's just a name. So then you would enter. So now we're in what's called a configuration extended, basically ACL configuration. Now we have to basically design, okay, well, what's going to happen? And we're going to deny the service, basically the ability to talk with that PC right here. We're going to say, hey, this one can't talk. So how do you do that? So you're going to do what's called a deny IP host. Now, what's the host? And the next thing is the IP address of the computer you're saying can't talk. So you'd go to PC3, you'd click on it, you'd go to desktop, IP configuration, and then here is the IP configuration for PC3. So this is the IP address that we need. So you again gonna make sure to open up that router, and you're gonna type in that IP address. It might be different from mine, but that's the IP you're going to use, whatever is assigned to that. So 192.168. Let's double check again what it was. PC3. .10.3 again. So we're saying, hey, this IP we're denying, but we can't just put in that. We have to put in what else. So this is the IP, and now we need to put in the IP address or the sub interface address that we're denying it access to. So you would then type in VLAN 20 configuration, IP configuration. And if you remember, it is 192.168.20.0, because that's the default router for VLAN 20. And that's what we're saying, hey, we're denying it. And then we're typing in a wildcard that is 0.0.0.255. And what a wildcard means is that all the bits in the host portion of the IP address are significant, while the sub portion is ignored. In other words, it specifies a range of IP addresses where the last offset, I always forget how to say that word, can be anything from 0 to 255. So that's the range in which we're saying, hey, that we're affecting. So that's the range we're affecting. You'll enter that. So now we've denied that. However, we need to permit the other IPs in the in VLAN 10 to still be able to access VLAN 20. So to do that, you do a permit call, permit command, permit IP any. Basically, hey, any IP can talk to anything on the network. So that's how that call is working. And so what we're doing is we're denying that specific IP 192.168.10.3 to any IP address within 192.168.20.0 subnet. And then all possible IP addresses in the range of .20.0 to .20.255. So just preventing that PC from communicating with devices in Sales Manager VLAN 20. But this permit IP any is going to allow the remaining IPs to talk. You enter that and you want to test it, right? You don't want to just be like, okay, let's just move on. Let's test. So I'm going to clear my scenario. Let's see, can this still talk to it? And remember, we just started the network, so you're probably going to get fails the first time. So always just clear that out. Try it again. Hey, that's success. But that's not the IP we blocked. So let's make sure the IP we blocked, not able to talk. Oh, it's still able to talk. You know why? Because we haven't established this ACL inside of the VLAN 10 sub interface. So how you do that is you'll exit and you're going to type in interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0.10. Again, you did this in assignment 4. This is the sub interface for VLAN 10. And you're then going to basically do a command called IP access group. And then you're going to type in that name you created. Again, for me, I created a long name called ACL prevent PC3, 3 to manager. And then you're going to do an out command. And what this is doing is basically configuring, this configuration prevents PC3 in VLAN 10 from communicating with VLAN 20 while still allowing communications to the other parts of the network to still work and communicate. So we're going to enter that and let's try it out. So that's still a success. That's good, right? Success. Let's try it the other way. Success. Let's try that other one. It's still getting a success. Let me double check, make sure that I typed it in correctly. Could be an inbound. I might have had it wrong because sometimes you get a little confused on that end. So just double checking, making sure that it's not outbound. P and face. Yes, my mistake. Again, not out, but in. And all you have to do to fix that is I'm going to type in no IP access group. And I'm just going to copy this. copy. So all the no command is basically deleting what I just wrote. And then I'm going to type in the correct one, which is actually just right here. Instead of out IP access group, your name of the ACL that you created, in instead, in. All right, so there we go. Now that's found. Sorry about that. So again, not an out and in. And see, it can't talk to it either. But this can still talk. All right, so that's how you do that. Did make a mistake by putting it as an out. That's my mistake, but it should be an in. So that's the second part of the assignment. The third part is to prevent all current and future users who use internal Wi-Fi from accessing the HR VLAN's devices. But we need to make an exception for the web server. So all of this here, right, these devices right over here are VLAN 1, smartphone web server, VLAN 1. So we're going to have to, again, specify a certain device and say, hey, you can't communicate with this VLAN at all. So you can't communicate with anything in this network. But to allow the web server to still access this. And again, all this will still need to be able to access everything else as well. So to do that, we're going to open up the ACP router again. You could just type in so we can start fresh, config T. And now we're going to make a new ACL list. So you're going to do that command call IP access list extended, and again create that name. And I use pretty showable names. Prevent internal Wi-Fi to HR. So I'm going to enter. Now I've created this new ACL list, and you're going to need to permit that web server, and putting it in order is necessary. So we're going to do a permit IP host, and again, we're going to put an IP address. So if you don't remember what the web server's IP address is, go here, you go to desktop, IP config. This is the IP that we're going to use. So you put that right there. We open up the DHCP, and we're going to type in 192.168.1.254. And you're going to need to put in, well, what are we permitting? And what we're permitting is the sub interface for VLAN 30. So that'll be 192.168.30.0. Again, that's the default router that we established for VLAN 30. And then we're going to type in that wildcard 0.0.0.255. And then you're going to enter. So we've basically stated, hey, you have access to the VLAN. Now we're going to deny the IP, and what we're denying is basically the sub interface of VLAN 1, and that is, again, we're going to use that default router, the 192.168.1.0, which is the default router for VLAN 1. And we're going to use that wildcard again, 0.0.0.255, basically establishing everything in IP cannot talk. Anything, if we add something new, you cannot talk to VLAN 30. And then we're going to say what default router we're talking about that we're denying this this access, which we're denying, again, VLAN 30. So the default router for VLAN 30. And you're going to, again, put that wildcard to establish all IP addresses. Whatever new IPs that we add to HR or into internal, none of them will talk with each other. That's what we're doing. So we're going to enter. And what we're going to do now is permit, we're going to permit VLAN 1 to talk with everything else. And basically just say, hey, you can still talk to everything else though, you're fine. You could talk to PC2, PC3, PC4, VLAN 10, 20, 40, the router, where you could talk to everything else still. So to do that, you need to type in 192.168.1.0. Again, that's the default router for VLAN 1. And again, you're going to call that wildcard 0.0.0.255, and you're going to type in any. Again, any is any IP address, any sub interface. We're allowing it. Permit. Oops, I forgot. Permit IP. Permit IP. My bad. It's the same thing for everything else. 0.0.0.255. Any. There we go. So now you've completed that ACL list. So similarly, you're going to exit, and you're going to then go to the sub interface of VLAN 1, because we need to now tell VLAN 1 to use this ACL. So interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0.1, because we're going to VLAN 1 sub interface. Enter. IP access group, and again, that name, whatever you called that. So ACL prevent internal Wi-Fi to HR. And then you're going to type in either out or in. Again, we're going to do in. There we go. We've established that. Fast forward just to make sure everything's good. All right. So let me turn on a new scenario. Fail. So this is not talking. This is not talking. Vice versa, the opposite way. So it's going to do in progress failed. Same with this one. It's going to be in progress and failed. But what we're worried about is this one. So let's make sure that's a success. Vice versa. Success. What about the other one? Success. And can this talk to the other ones? Yep. You can talk to that. Can it talk to this? Yep. Can it talk to here? Yes. And can it talk to the laptop? I'm gonna say fail, but again, the laptop hasn't talked to anything yet. So now it succeeds again. Every time you first start it, always fails. Let's see, can you talk to the router? Yes, you can. And so can the server. It can still talk to everything else. So now you've established web server can still talk to HR. HR can talk to the web server, but everything else in the internal Wi-Fi, not allowed. Can't talk to anything else. It won't be allowed to talk to anything in VLAN 30. It won't be able to talk to HR. So that's the part 3. Now we're on the last part 4. And part 4 says to prevent guests who connect using the guest Wi-Fi from communicating with any internal devices. That's including VLAN 10 to 30. So we're going to include 10, 20, and 30, and the internal Wi-Fi, which is VLAN 1. So we're doing VLAN 10, 20, 30, and 1, but allowing them to visit the company website. And also, of course, I want to make sure it still talks to the router. So, and you don't want to affect the other tasks we just created. So to do that, I'm going to create another ACL list. This one's going to be the longest ACL list because we got a lot more that we got to configure. So again, just type in so we can start fresh, config T, and make sure I have the notes just to make sure I don't mess it up when I'm typing. So we're going to do in that call IP access list extended ACL, and again, just name it whatever you want. I just name them to make it easier for me to see. Guest to internal. So I'm just referring to internal everything basically. Enter. Now we're in that configuration of the extended ACL. Now we're going to do a permit IP. We're going to make sure, hey, you can still talk to the server. We're going to establish that first. Permit IP 192.168.40.0. So we're saying the whole sub interface of everything that connects to the guest Wi-Fi, you're still allowed to talk to everything. You need that wildcard 0.0.0.255. And then we're going to say host. And we're going to do 192.168.1.254. So we're basically saying, hey, you can talk to this IP address. Everything in that sub interface in VLAN 40 can talk to this IP address. We're establishing that. So we're going to enter. We've done that. We've established that. Now we're going to start denying everything else. So now we're going to say, hey, deny this sub interface, this sub interface, this sub interface. And how that works is you just deny IP. You're going to type in the sub interface default router for VLAN 40, which is 192.168.40.0. Wildcard 0.0.0.255. And you're going to do 192.168.1.0 because we're starting with the VLAN 1 sub interface default router. Basically saying we're denying you to talk with VLAN 1. And you're going to need that wildcard again, because anything that's new that establishes, we want to also make sure it's denying. Enter. And if you don't want to try to write everything else out, again, you can just click up on the up arrow. You just click up on the up arrow and delete what is not necessary. Oops, I deleted a little too much. 0.255. Again, the first portion is going to be the same. We're talking about VLAN 40 denying all of these other IP sub interfaces. So we're going to deny 192.168.10, which is denying the sales staff VLAN 10 sub interface default router, which is .0. 192.168.10.0 is the default router for that. And then we're going to call that wildcard again of the 0.0.0.255. I'm going to call that. You're going to call 192.168.20.0. Again, talking to going to that sub interface and saying this is the default router, and hey, we're not going to talk to them. You're not going to be allowed to talk to them. Wildcard again, same wildcard, 255 at the end. Enter. And you're going to do that as well for VLAN 30, the HR department. You're going to say you're denying it. So again, sub interface default router 192.168.30.0, and then the same wildcard that we've been calling. Enter. The last thing you're going to do, though, is say, hey, everything else, though, you're fine to talk with. So we're basically just IP, permit IP, any. So any IP can talk to any other IP in the network. So if you create like an IP address or VLAN 60 or VLAN 70 or anything else, the router, hey, we need to talk to the router, which we want to talk to the router. That's what we're just establishing. Into that. All right, we're going to exit. We're going to go into the interface, gigabit Ethernet, 0/0/0 dot 40, going in there, and then if I recall correctly, it's an in call. I'm just going to double check and make sure that it is an in call. And yes, it is an in call. Sorry, just double checking, making sure. Don't want to give another false issue. And then, so again, here we're just going to do the IP access group name of whatever the ACL that you created to prevent this from talking with things. Guest to internal, and then again we're going to do in for inbound. Now we've established that you cannot talk with anything else. This cannot talk to anything. It can't talk to anything except the server and the router. So let's try that. So before I do that, I'm going to create a new scenario. Then I'm going to, can you talk to this? No, that's good. Can you talk to this? No. Can you talk? Can you talk to this? No. Can you talk to this? Nope. Can I talk to this? No. Can I talk to the phone? Nope. Can I talk to the server? Yes. Can. Can I talk to the router? Yes, you can. So you cannot talk to anything else. You can't talk to VLAN 20, 10, 30, or 1, except the things we've established, which is the web server. So that's the assignment. So you established everything, and you have created all the ACLs that you need. And again, if you ever want to look at what your ACLs are, you're trying to figure that out, I just typed in to go to this out of the configuration mode. You type in show access list. And now it's showing me everything in the list, right? Showing me everything in each list. So here's this access list that I created, the first one for PC3 Manager. And it's telling me, well, let me stretch this out so it's a little bit, there we go. So here's that deny IP that I wrote. Here's that permit any that I wrote for this one, for this list. Here's the other list that I created that has all the permit and deny calls that we established. And here's the other access list, the one we just created with all the other permits and denies that we just did. And so if you ever mess up, I would again tell you to type in so you get out of the configuration. You do this show access list call so you can see everything. And if you typed in anything incorrectly, you would do config T. You would then do the IP access call, the IP access list extended. You would then get the name. So let's say I messed up and you messed up on the first one. Retype in that name to go back into that configuration. And all you would do is hey, if you wrote the deny wrong, you just type in no 10. And what I'm saying is these numbers that are established right here, if I typed in no 10 and I entered, this disappears. This whole list disappears. And I'll even show you because I already have my assignment finished. So if I do a no 20 for this, it's not going to just disappear from up here. I just wrote no 20, I entered. I will then end and then go back to show access list, and 20 is gone. As you can see, 20 is gone. And you're like, okay, well then what would I do to configure it correctly? Well, again, you would just go back to that IP access list and you would type in what you actually wanted to type in. And so I'm just going to, again, permit IP any again, enter. I can end, see the new list, not show access list, and there it is again. And again, it needs to be in the correct order. So the deny has to come before the permit, or the permit needs to come before the deny. It just establishes the ruling in the ACL list, because when I try to do a deny before a permit, it doesn't want to work. So make sure to follow what you're seeing. Follow the way you're supposed to do it. So this is deny first, then permit. This one's permit, then deny, then permit. And then that one right there. So that's how you do this assignment. Again, if you need any help, talk with everybody, but I hope this video helps, and I hope y'all are able to do good on the assignment. Y'all have a good one, and y'all take care. Okay, all righty.